everybody, welcome back to my channel, and this is going to be a video all about my top reads of 2021. These ones I've got here to show you physically are physical books, but I will be mentioning a couple that are books that I've read from Kindle, ebook, audiobook, and even some that I maybe borrowed from the library, but I will show you all the ones that I have physically. I thought I would quickly get this filmed whilst I've got the daylight on my side. It is Christmas Eve, so Merry Christmas to everybody if you celebrate, and a Happy New Year, or Happy Holidays if you don't. I have my Christmas gammon cooking, and I thought, do you know what? Whilst it's still daylight, I could be cooking, I could be cleaning, I could be prepping vegetables. Instead, I thought, well, all that can be done when it's dark. This will be more difficult, and if the daylight stays on my side, I will do a couple of videos as well on some of like my most anticipated top reads of 2022, things I want to get to sooner. So without further ado, let's get started. One of the first books I'm going to talk about, and if I talk about a book that's in a series, I probably mean the whole series, the Selection series by Kira Cass. I read this with Daisy May this year. We read the whole series. There's also a book, excuse my bookshelves behind me, they look an absolute mess. There is also a book I think called Happily Ever After, which is like a collection of short stories from the world as well. But it was really refreshing to go back to a sort of dystopia. I haven't read anything like this in a long time, and it was really good. We flew through the series. I really enjoyed it. I kind of was a little bit hesitant when we first went into it, thinking I would enjoy it, but maybe wouldn't enjoy it as much as, I don't know, 15-year-old me would have done. But actually, I really enjoyed it and enjoyed the series as a whole. It's kind of split into kind of two. You've got the first three books, The Selection, The Elite, and The One. And then you have, I think, two others, which are then sort of like offshoots further on in time from the first sort of initial trilogy. But yeah, really enjoyed this. Really highly recommend. It was an easy, quick, yet still had a bit of meat to it. There was still a bit of politics, but it wasn't anything too taxing, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? But yes, thoroughly enjoyed this one. The next book I have to mention, unfortunately I don't have a physical copy of, but that is I Am Unworthy by Angela Mack. I really enjoyed this one. It was such a intense book, and I read both I Am Unworthy and I Am Unbreakable by Angela, and they were just amazing. Really real, deep books, and were really emotional reading them as well. But I really enjoyed both, and I can't wait to read more from Angela. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that she's got some, I've been following her on Instagram, and I'm hoping that she's got something coming out again soon. I believe she's going to do another sort of duology, but based around some different characters. But she also has I believe it's, I don't know if it's dystopia or fantasy, but something a little bit different as well in the mix, which I'm really looking forward to as well. But yeah, I read both of those on Kindle, and really enjoyed them, and highly recommend Angela Mack, I Am Unworthy and I Am Unbreakable. They were both really good and were brilliant reads. This list is kind of like, it's not done by what was best and what was the best of the best and the not best of the best. This is done through the year, so obviously I read I Am Unworthy and The Selection earlier on in the year, and I'm kind of going through the year with my reads, if that makes sense. The next book I have to mention is probably no surprise if you know me, A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J Maas. I love Sarah J Maas. I love her writing. I say that, but I still haven't read the Throne of Glass series. But I was really interested to start this new trilogy. So for anyone that doesn't know, A Court of Silver Flames is the fourth book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. But A Court of Thorns and Roses is kind of more of a trilogy. So A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, and then A Court of Wings and Ruin. We have A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is kind of like 3.5. And that kind of bridges the gap between those and this next trilogy, which are all going to be based, I believe, on different characters. This one was based around Nesta. We were experiencing, I believe, both Nestas. It's a while since I've read it. Did we have both Nestas and Cassian's perspective? I can't remember. But really enjoyed this. This was kind of like a healing story, and kind of coming to terms with the feelings and things that have happened, and it really was really an emotional read, but just kind of like it was just amazing. And this was probably the most steamy Sarah J Maas book I've read so far. I think this has finally now been published and kind of categorized as adult or new adult, which I think is highly needed. But thoroughly enjoyed this one. I can't wait for, in 2022, House of Sky and Breath, the next Crescent City novel. I'm kind of thinking, like, do I have time to reread Crescent City before that comes out? I'm not sure. But yes, really enjoyed this installment. Can't wait for more. Sarah J Maas is a total auto-buy author for me now, and it's sat up here, but I do really need to read the Throne of Glass series, and I think that needs to be high on my list for 2022 as well. The next book, again, is a book I don't have physically because I don't actually own any of them, but the Bridgerton books. Bridgerton was obviously a hit Netflix show in 2021. Everyone seemed to be watching it, and then I quickly jumped on the bandwagon with the books. I read all bar one of the main Bridgerton books. I think I've got the final one still. I think I'm part way through it. Don't know how far through, but I really enjoyed them. Really enjoyed the first one, centered around Daphne. The only criticism I have is that they did get a little bit samey, and I think I read them a bit too close to each other. I think if I'd spread them out a little bit further, I might have enjoyed them slightly more. But nonetheless, really enjoyed them, really immersed myself in that sort of Regency era, and it really got me thinking about reading more classics and more books set in that time period. So I really enjoyed those as well. Everything I really enjoyed that I'm talking about. The next I have to talk about is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This series, this trilogy, I read all three and enjoyed all three. I really wasn't expecting to love these as much as I did. They are based around three sisters. So the first one, Chloe Brown, is obviously about Chloe Brown, and then her two sisters, Eve and Danny. And all of the sisters are really, I hate to say it, but normal. It was really refreshing to read a book that had normal people, and people that have problems that Chloe suffers from kind of chronic illness, and it was really interesting to see that represented and just felt really real. I really enjoyed the romance, and I really enjoyed reading something that was really funny and just really easy to read. Very similar in sort of how I would categorize it, kind of on par with Lindsay Kelk, in the sense that find it just really real and funny and enjoyable, but also appreciate that there's bigger messages as well being discussed, if that makes sense. Highly recommending these if you haven't read them already. The next series, everyone has been bashing me for not reading this, and then I finally picked this up, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, in some bookage group chats. They're like, come on Sophie, you need to read this, it's so amazing. And I was kind of like, yeah, all right, kept putting it off. This was a Christmas present from Daisy last year, and I finally read it this year. I finally succumbed, read it, and I did not regret it, and then quickly binged the rest of the series. I really enjoyed this. I thought it, again, I was a little bit skeptical and thought, would I enjoy it? I've been, since when this was kind of really big, I have read a lot of adult historical fiction, really dense fantasy as well, and I was kind of like, am I going to enjoy this? Am I going to find this really young? No. Highly recommend. It's mixed media as well. So we have sort of like transcripts and production logs and sort of like things, photographs of like things that have been pictured, like drawings, diaries, things like that. It was just really immersive, and at no point did I think, oh, I knew what was going to happen, what the answer was going to be. And I think that's the key word there, is immersive. It just, you were in this world, you were dealing with this murder along with what's her name, Pippa. You were there with her, and you were gunning for her to figure out what had actually happened, and really enjoyed this. And this series kind of kick-started in me as well, a sort of like murder mystery phase, and really, really, really enjoyed. The next book I have to talk about is probably one of my top books of the year. And that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is one of those books that I will keep talking to people about until the cows come home, that I will keep recommending, that I think should be on lots of school syllabi, whatever. It should be on the syllabus for all people should have to read this. This is about a character called Addie LaRue, and she makes a deal with the devil on her wedding day. Is that a spoiler? I don't think it is. Where she makes a deal with him, and then she becomes forgettable. And no one remembers her, no one knows who she is. So it makes life very, very difficult for Addie, because she can't lease a house or get to know anybody and have friends, because no one will remember her. They leave the room, they forget who she is. She can have moments, and she can have nice moments, but nothing is kind of like long-standing. Everything's very temporary for her. This was absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal, to the point where I actually bought the anniversary edition. And again, I'm gutted that it took me as long as it did to get to this, because this didn't come out in 2021. I think this came out in 2020. So I was a little bit late to the party reading it. But oh my gosh, it was amazing. It was amazing. One of these end of year like top books wouldn't be right without mentioning a Taylor Jenkins Reid book, and this was the newest release this year, so this is the one that gets mentioned. Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was really, really interesting, and I really enjoyed that it was had an Easter egg from Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. There is a figure in here, there is a person, a character in here who is one of Evelyn Hugo's husbands, and not a very big one, not a main one really, but still a link there to her characters. This is set in Malibu, obviously, in the 80s, and it was really, again, immersive. I was really immersed in this, and it's centered around a party. We've got ideas of family, found family, and what it means to be family, and also just kind of overcoming bad relationships. And this was just really, 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 really good. I really, really enjoyed this, and it was really interesting to kind of see portrayed children that have grown up in the limelight, you know, children that have grown up with either one of them becoming famous or having a famous father, and it was really interesting to see that sort of perspective as well. And I can't wait to see what Taylor Jenkins Reid does next. And I have some of her backlist books on my TBR. I'm looking over here because my TBR shelf's over here. What do I have? I have After I Do, and I can't think if I have another one or not, but I do have it on my hit list for 2022 to read more Taylor Jenkins Reid that was published pre me discovering her writing. And you know, I talked about A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, started this whole kind of new murder mystery kick. The next book I have to talk about is The Appeal by Janice Hallett. I've still got some of my bookmarks in here because this was read as a buddy read. Oh my gosh, this book was amazing. I can't really think if I've read anything else like this in a similar vein. The thing that this kind of most likens to in my head is The Illuminae Files by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, but it's so different in the sense that the subject matter is completely different. But the idea that The Illuminae Files is a case file that you're reading through, it kind of ties in with this. The Appeal is basically you reading through a case file of a murder. There are two students, and cut long story short, they are trying to figure out whether the right person was imprisoned or not. And what's really interesting is that at times you know as much as them, and you don't know any more, and then more information comes to light and you start reading. And this was just really, really, really interesting. And how, you know, this idea of there being more than one crime, and don't want to give away any spoilers, but I really, really, really enjoyed this. It felt really refreshing to read because I felt like I hadn't read anything like it before. If you've read anything else like this, please let me know. And yes, I cannot wait. Janice Hallett has another book coming out, I believe, on January 13th. and I'm really, really intrigued to see what that's like, whether it's anything related to this book or whether it's something completely different. And again, I think she'll become an auto-buy author. I don't read a lot of crime, I don't read a lot of thrillers, and I always really, really enjoy it when I read it. And I think this year has just proven that, because the next book I have to mention is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. Like I said, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, it kind of sparked this murder mystery vibe for me. And this was amazing. The Thursday Murder Club basically is a club of people that discuss murders. They live in a sort of retirement village. They kind of have everything there. These are people that have all past the prime of their life. Like, that's awful to say. They've all got secrets. They've all kind of got things that they maybe don't want to talk about, and they've all got things they maybe keep hidden. But what was amazing about this book was that it gave me such comforting vibes. These characters became so three-dimensional for me, and they were people that I could imagine sitting down and like having tea with, and joining you know, a meeting of their Thursday Murder Club. Basically, the Thursday Murder Club is, like I say, a club of people that get together. They dispute, they kind of look at old murder cases. They get the what do you call it, the hobby room on a Thursday. So they call themselves the Thursday Murder Club. A mix of people from lots and lots of different backgrounds, and one of them is I think an ex-police officer, if my memory serves me right, or is kind of, I think one of them was, but she's very, very ill now, and she can't partake. She's very, very poorly. She was ex-police. And then the main character, one of the main characters we kind of follow, we kind of get the feeling that she was maybe Secret Service and maybe a spy, because she has lots of links to, and always has a story to tell about different countries, and we never quite really know what she did. But amazing, amazing, amazing. I really, really enjoyed it. And I have The Man Who Died Twice. I think it's actually by my bed, because I wanted to read it very, very soon after this, and I unfortunately haven't got round to it yet. But this like just totally gave me, what was also really lovely is this is set in Sussex. It's kind of like Sussex is mentioned. I'm from Sussex. I live in Sussex. Have done all my life. And there was a couple of things that were kind of mentioned, and I was like, oh, I live near there, and oh, I know exactly where he means when they mentioned that. And it was just really nice as well. And I could imagine, like I said, I could imagine all these characters kind of going about their day. And I honestly, they were so three-dimensional that I felt like I could crawl into the book, sit down with them and have a cup of tea with them and join in their murder club. So hats off to you, Richard Osman, because that was really, really good. And fun fact, my dad's actually met Richard Osman, and I think he knows Richard Osman's mum, I think. Fun fact for you. The next book I have to mention, my phone is, I think, overheating, so I'm going to wrap this up quite quickly. But The Seven Sisters by Lucinda Riley. I finally picked up this series. There is a buddy read going on Instagram, and I finally picked it up, and oh my gosh, fallen in love with this series. I have now read the first two. I'm on the third book at the moment. I kind of have it currently reading. It's a series I think I'm going to take my time with. Again, like I talked about with the Bridgerton series, this has the potential to get a bit samey. There's quite a similar structure to them. So in that sense, I'm going to space them out a bit more, because the structure's seems to be quite similar. But The Seven Sisters is basically about seven sisters. Well, six sisters. They have lost their adoptive father at the beginning of this book, and he starts giving them clues posthumously. Do you call it posthumously? As part of his will and testament, he leaves them all clues as to their true heritage, where they come from, and basically sends them all on little treasure hunts to try and find out where they come from, their history, and who they are and where they come from. Really, really, really enjoyed this one. Enjoyed the series I've read so far as a whole, and yeah, highly recommend if you love historical fiction, split narratives, and yeah, amazing. Really, really gutted I didn't pick this up sooner, because all of these I kind of feel like are books I could have picked up sooner. Love this. And then the final book I have to talk about, and I'm kind of thinking, oh, am I missing something? But if I am, maybe I'll have to do a part 2 video, is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This I read and Buddy read with Charlotte, and I was a little bit, again, this kind of fits into that sort of era of sort of, is it going to be too young, is it going to be too YA? And oh my gosh, I absolutely really enjoyed this book. I feel like I read it really quickly when I actually read it. I think I went a few days where I didn't read a lot, so I was a little bit behind on the Buddy read, and then I think I maybe even had to pick something else up. But oh my gosh, this book was so good. I was so intrigued and I really enjoyed it. It's not the best book I've ever read, but it's ideal for maybe people that haven't read fantasy, or you know, kind of want something to dip their toes in. It's not their normal genre, but I think also a fantasy lover will really enjoy it because it's a little bit tamer. Yes, there's still fantastical elements to it, and there's still sort of magical elements to it, but it is kind of a little bit softer. I really enjoyed this. I was intrigued the whole way through because there was questions that weren't answered the whole way through, and then things that come to light that you're like, oh my gosh. And the rest of this series, again, is top of my list for finishing in 2022. And yes, really enjoyed this. So those were some of the books that I read that I really enjoyed in 2021. I really hope I'm not missing anything, but I am human. We all make we all miss things. But like I say, if there's anything that comes to mind after filming this that's like, oh my gosh, how come that I did not mention this, then don't worry, I'll come back, I'll do a part 2 or something like that for you. But what did you read in 2021 that really stood out? What's your top book? I can't pick favourites, so that's how I get favourites. This is a narrowed down favourites list, and it's quite large, and I'm pointing at them. They're a stack. I daren't touch them because the stacks will topple over. But yeah, let me know what you read this year. What was a standout book for you, or a standout series for you? I feel like I kind of dipped my toes in loads of amazing series this year, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to my reading in 2022, and I can't wait to share with you some of the books that I plan on reading next year. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!